Hey, what is up, everyone? Happy 2023 to all of you. I hope you guys enjoyed all your holidays. I hope you guys are doing well out there. Welcome to the first Zoomcast Actor Interview session of 2023. I know I haven't done one of these for a while, guys. I apologize, but some things happened in my life that unfortunately, kept me from doing these actor interview sessions. I'm very excited today. I have a very special guest. He is a gentleman, an actor that has done many things throughout his career. He's been in the game for a while. His IMDb credits are incredible. I was just talking to him a few moments ago, and I printed out all his projects that he's been a part of, and it's literally 12 pages long. Very impressive resume, definitely. You guys know him as Holden Holloway from She-Hulk. He's Jennifer Walters' boss on She-Hulk. He did amazing in that. He also plays Father Gordon in all the Conjuring movies. He's amazing in that. And you also know him as Reg from Alexandria in the Walking Dead series. So he's none other than Steve Coulter, and I'm very excited to have him on my actor interview session this morning. So let's go ahead and bring him on. Bear with me, you guys. We're bringing Steve on here. Hope you guys are all doing well out there. How's it going? And we're also going to have questions, a Q&A session with Steve afterwards. So start prepping your questions for Steve at the end of the interview. And here he is.
Hello.
Steve, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining my Speedcast actor interview session today. I truly appreciate your time. How have you been?
Pretty good. Taking it easy over the holidays. How were your holidays?
You know what? Every day above ground is a good day, man.
Yeah, I always say like, well, I got 2 legs and I'm breathing, so that's a good start. So, yes.
Man, I just want to congratulate you on all your success, and most of all your recent success that you've had joining, the Marvel universe, the cinematic universe.
That was fun. That was fun. Yeah, it's odd because you're like a little kid because I'm a grown-up man hopefully by now, but it's still because I grew up reading those comics and I was a huge Captain America fan. I had a Captain America coloring book. And so yeah, it's very fun. It's very fun.
So I gotta ask you the whole casting process for that. We've heard some stories from other actors. That it's such an incognito, very secretive. Almost like the CIA is recruiting you, something like that. For those roles. How did it come about? How did your agent approach you about it? How did it come to fruition? Is it true what they say about that they have the the laser scope on your forehead for everything? And
well, it's interesting when I did Walking Dead, of course it was like the 5th season. They were much more secretive. They were like they did like you get your audition pages that you're going to be reading, auditioning with, and for example for The Walking Dead they really disguised it. I mean you sort of like the scene was like in New York City, which of course Walking Dead didn't take place then in New York City. The characters' names were all completely different. They really tried to make sure you couldn't have any idea what it would be. For She-Hulk, they didn't. They said for an upcoming Marvel series, but they may just said, "Well, we think it's She-Hulk," and and oh, they changed the name of my character, but the scenes I read were actually scenes we ended up shooting word for word. They just changed the name of my character. Um, and I don't remember. I'm trying to remember if I had to sign an NDA. I probably did. I may not, but it wasn't as strict as I thought they were going to be. But once you're on, they're really good. There's like no. Well, I very rarely bring my phone. I usually leave it in the dressing trailer, whatever. Um, but yeah, they're really strict. I think there was one stunt woman who took some pictures, and she was fired the next day. Yeah, because they were revealing like characters that they don't want that released, so they're strict about it. But other than that, they're very, very nice. It's not a big corporate feeling. It's just like it feels like an independent film shoot, which is weird, but it's like a short film with a huge budget. So it's like, yeah.
See, that's funny that you mentioned the NDA because you guys, the show itself made fun of that.
Yeah.
You guys kept breaking the fourth wall, and a lot of people don't know this, but that Jennifer Walters character in the comics was the original comic book character to break the fourth wall, not Deadpool.
Yeah, exactly. She did it back in the 80s. So, and she did, there's a thing where she was in a story in the comic and she got mad at the story and tore through the page, in the artwork, sort of like, it's kind of the way they did in the finale where she goes into the Disney Plus menu. So yeah, she was the first. That character was one of the first to break the fourth wall. So.
And I thought it was so funny that, what was it, the head writer or the head of Marvel Studios was that robotic, was it a Kevin?
Yeah. And he said, he gave them free reign. It's like, you can make fun of me as much as you like. So it's like, cool. It's a really good group of people. I didn't know what to expect because I knew, Marvel's this huge machine. But no, everyone was really pretty relaxed and creative, and there wasn't that corporate feeling at all, which is nice. Because sometimes I've been on feature films where it's some major studio and you'll have like 5 producers, in between takes they're talking to the director, and that's not good. It really dilutes a movie. But that wasn't the case with this. Like Kevin Feige, the head of Marvel, he came to set maybe once or twice, but just visited like a visiting uncle. So they were great.
How much pressure, if any, did you feel being part of this project? Because, a lot of actors have talked about, once you reach that Marvel Cinematic Universe or whatever, there's a lot more added pressure. Did you feel that pressure going into this?
No, not really. The only pressure is I tend to put a lot of pressure on myself because you want to do the best job. My motto has always been do more than is asked of you, and so you just want to be at your best. And the pressure I felt more was because most of my scenes were with Tatiana Maslany, and I was a huge fan of her work from watching Orphan Black. I saw because when I first discovered that show, I was like, who is this woman who just completely transformed? So I felt a little more pressure, just because I wanted to, she's really good and I wanted to match her. And she's one of the nicest people in the planet. It sounds kind of corny, but she really is. So that was the pressure I felt. I didn't feel pressure from the coming, maybe because I'm older and, because in the back of my head, it's not being cynical, but it's like, I'm not, pressure is someone working in an emergency room. This is just a TV show or a movie. You want to do a great job and, but no one's going to die. Like, we're just making a TV show about rescuing orphans from them, So, yeah.
You talked about reading the comics as a child, being a big Captain America fan. As you well know, San Diego Comic-Con, the whole Comic-Con, it's just blown up, the last, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Did you feel, and I hate to call them fanboys, but there's a lot of fanboys out there that know the material inside out.
They know it better than you.
Did you think about that?
No, well, it's because you anticipate, because I knew there was going to be all sorts of, because the Marvel fans are a little bit like, they're so opinionated. And I understand why, because if you grow up reading this stuff and watching this stuff, and we knew that there, but again, She-Hulk addressed it. Like people were like, "Oh, how come there's another Marvel superhero woman?" It's like, you know, it's like, I think we got enough. It's like, really, you have like Wonder Woman and Black Widow. It's not a ton, you know. But what is fun is that they're a little bit like the Walking Dead fan base. They're so loyal, and like you said, they know the stories better than They would tell me stuff. Did you know that your character da 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 da? Oh, really? I was not aware of that. And so, it's kind of great because it's a worldwide fan base. So I got a text or something from someone in Pakistan. And it's crazy. The same thing with Walking Dead was like Tokyo and Brazil and Argentina, and it was really kind of cool.
And you mentioned Argentina. Right before we went on live, we had a little conversation about your where you grew up. Of course, you're from Canada. You're born in Canada, but you spent some time in South America growing up. As well as Cleveland Heights in Ohio. Can you talk about growing up in South America and just, the culture shock of being down there?
Well, it was amazing. It was actually, I'll mention it in a sec, but the culture shock was moving back to the States. Because I guess I was around 9 when we moved to Cali, Colombia. And it was back when, Colombia's back to being fairly safe again. And back then it was very safe. It wasn't safe for diplomats because they would kidnap diplomats' kids, but they didn't bother with me. My dad ran a factory, a Canadian factory, and it was great because I was there from when I was 9 to when I was 13, and I went to like an international school. So I was taking Spanish, like the way Americans take English class. I took Spanish class, so it was total immersion. And at first, I went like 2 months, not totally lost, but then I just had to. And all my friends were Colombian, or from Mexico or Costa Rica or whatever. And it was amazing because people there, I think, matured earlier. We did like some pretty cool, dangerous stuff when I think about it. But even at school where I went, like all the teachers were former Peace Corps workers. So they're these young people. They're really motivated, really funny and fun. And then when I came back to the States. And so I got to learn Spanish. One thing was really cool because in the United States, we were like middle class, economically, but down there, because of the way the dollar worked, we got to kind of be rich for 4 years. I had a horse, I had a soccer field at my house. But then I moved back to the States and I'm like, got no horse in the States, no soccer. I just got a little house with one garage. But it was just kind of cool because the people there, it was such a variety of people. And you had friends from every, country. But going back to the States, everyone, I didn't know what a clique was, a group of friends. And where I moved back to Cleveland Heights, everyone had grown up with each other. So everyone already had their circle. So when I came, I didn't know anybody. And I was painfully shy, like almost diagnostically shy. And but it was weird because I started watching, in Colombia, they didn't have much television back then. I'm sure now, then it didn't even start till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so it really was, and then it would end at like 9. So, so I read a lot and stuff, but when I came back to the States, it was like it was kind of the golden age of TV with it had All in the Family and Mary Tyler Moore, a lot of these comedies. And I watched movies on, and so I think that's where I got a kind of education in film and TV and mainly comedy because I watched a lot of comedy shows and I think I learned timing and stuff because I was so shy. I'd come home from school and I would watch television for like from 3 in the afternoon till the Tonight Show at night. So I didn't make a lot of friends the first couple of years, but I learned, I guess, TV and comedy and movies and values. I think so.
That's awesome, Steve. That was pretty much my childhood as well.
Really?
I used to just watch TV, F Troop, The Munsters, Gilligan's Island, Addams Family, Three's Company, all that stuff. Laverne and Shirley, Happy Days. So I totally relate to that. But does I mean, growing up down there in South America, going back to South
Yeah.
America, did you tell your agent or, hey, if there's any roles where I need to speak Spanish, I can do it? Or
No,
are they aware?
I know. I'm trying to think. I did early on, because as I mentioned to you when we talked briefly before, back in I guess it was the early 2000s, PBS did a show called Salsa, which is on, it was geared towards, and I'm trying to think, I told my agent then that I spoke Spanish, but I said, I don't speak it. I tried doing some voiceovers, but as you know, Spanish has words with like 5 syllables. You can't just say it slowly. You gotta go, and then so I tried a couple, and I was like, I can't. My Spanish is very conversational, but if it got technical, I just wasn't facile enough with it. But when that came along, it was a show geared towards kindergartners and first graders, and I was like, well, that's right in my alley. But it was fun because it was like it was weird because a lot of my neighbors, my daughter was around in kindergarten at the time, so she was actually hearing my dad's voice. I was the voice of Ratoncito.
Ratoncito.
And also there was these was it Chivo? Is that a goat?
Yeah.
Chivo?
Chivo.
I was Chivo and a couple other things. So that was the only time. But other than that, like I said, I've done when I've had to do some press stuff, like I did The Conjuring, I talked to a lot of Spanish TV stations, and so that was kind of fun. And we did this movie I shot that's actually coming out. Oh, it's coming out in a few weeks. Shotgun Wedding with Jennifer Lopez. We shot in the Dominican Republic during COVID, and so it was really fun. I got to rekindle my Spanish, because a lot of the crew was Dominican. And also when I lived in New York City, I lived there for like 7 years, and all the corner bodegas and stuff. And the first neighborhood I lived in Brooklyn was a Dominican neighborhood, and I was the only Anglo person within like 8 blocks. Because the first day I was there, I went downstairs to a little bodega, and they were talking about me in Spanish. They go, oiga, mire, el gringo está aquí. I went, yo no soy gringo, yo soy canadiense. And they were really nice to me. It's like, oh yeah, he's not American, he's Canadian. And we know that, but they were nice to me. But I got really mad. I said, yo no soy un gringo, yo soy canadiense.
I love when people that speak other languages, they go into certain shops, and there's a lot of YouTube videos of guys going into like a Chinese restaurant or a Vietnamese nail salon or whatever, and they know how to speak the language, but of course they're either white or something else, and then they literally start talking bad about that individual, and then they surprise them by talking their language, and they're like, oh crap, I'm so sorry.
It's really fun.
That. And let me tell you guys that are on the live right now, Steve talks pretty good Spanish. I heard it, so it's legit, guys. So if you're ever around him, if you're working on set with him, start talking Spanish with him, because it's pretty cool. So I gotta ask you, the Jennifer Lopez project. How did that work out? How did the process go for that? How did you, is that something your agent just said, hey, they want you, or is that you have to?
Out of nowhere. I have a wonderful manager in Los Angeles, Brittany McDade, great, just so kind, and she's great. She works really hard getting me out there. And she just called in the middle. This was like, a couple of winters ago. I just got a call saying, you're on the short list for a role in the new Jennifer Lopez movie. And I didn't have to audition or anything. And then she called a couple of days later and said, you've got it. And she said, she was joking. She said, well, the bad news is you're going to have to go to the Dominican Republic for like a month and a half in the middle. And it was kind of ridiculous, because not only was it a wonderful director, incredible cast, of just really nice people. I mean, they're talented, but also just nice people. But since it was COVID, normally you're housed in different hotels and stuff, and you work and then you go back to your hotel. But because of COVID, they had to sequester us in one place. They said, well, Jennifer Lopez, because she has a big staff, she was at a different place. But the rest of us, there's like the 8 sort of main cast. We were in this little villa. It's ridiculous. Overlooking the ocean. and we ate all our meals together. So it was kind of like summer camp at a luxury villa, because they had to keep us, they had to keep us quarantined. We couldn't be out and about. So we all got to really get to know each other. And normally on a film or TV show, you keep in touch with a couple of people, but we've all kept in really good touch for like a year and a half now. And it's interesting because they're all, we were all actors, but no one talked about acting stuff. It was just, we talked about family, sports, music, life stuff. It was kind of refreshing. I mean, and I like actually talking about, I'm not a big fan of talking about the businessy stuff, like, oh, what have you auditioned for? Because actors get very competitive, but the process is, I like talking about the process and things like that. So yeah, that job was, and everyone acknowledged it, that no one had that kind of experience before. We got kind of spoiled because, yeah, you're waking up every morning looking out at the ocean. Everyone was very, very grateful, especially during COVID. So.
That's awesome, man. And congratulations to you for that. I mean, the fact that you didn't even have to audition, that's awesome. And then you made another family out there while you were filming during COVID.
It's funny. I talk about what my daughter's an actor as well, and she's in her late 20s. And I talk about the stuff that sticks to your ribs because it is fun. Because when you start out, it's so hard, and I'm sure you've experienced some of it yourself, actor, because you can be treated really poorly. I did jobs where I didn't get paid. Once I started doing movies and TV, you get cut out of things. I once was on a set where I was working with the director, John Frankenheimer, who was a legendary filmmaker. And I had this monologue. I was playing a Civil War veteran. And my scene was I walk up to these guys and I have this long monologue that basically explained. And that day on set, I'd lost like 20 pounds, so I'd look like this prisoner at this prison camp. I was all ready. I'd done a lot of prep. And as I'm walking, they say, you're going to set for rehearsal. And as I'm walking up for rehearsal, I hear my lines being said. And I'm like, yeah, I did exactly that. I went, I thought, well, maybe like they're just, maybe an assistant is reading the lines to get, And no, the director had decided just right before, without even seeing me that morning, he had decided that it shouldn't be a speech, that it should be broken up and be said by some of the main actors. So I didn't get to say any of my own lines. They just took it. And the director never took me aside and said, hey, we've decided to do this. So you get a lot of those kind of things, or you think a role is going to be. I had one time I thought I was in my early 30s. I thought I had a role in a major film that I thought, and then it all sort of fell through. So when you get, it makes it that much sweeter. The stuff that sticks to your ribs is making it through that stuff, the people you meet, getting a role that you think, man, I don't know how to do that, and then you do it and you're satisfied with it, and the other, so it's those, and that's the stuff that sort of sticks with you. Where, especially when you get a role, like even this role, the role for the Jennifer Lopez movie, there wasn't a lot of description about the character in the script. He does all this stuff, but it doesn't say what kind of guy he is. And I was like, where do I start with that? It was kind of tricky, but it was. Then you have little things like I had a beard when I auditioned, when I got the part, and then so when I got there, I said to the director, he goes, well, I don't want you with the beard, but shave it off in stages. So I shaved off, and I had a goatee. And I went, no, and then I shaved. And I had this mustache, coincidentally. And I went, oh, there's the guy. That's him. That's there. And I knew what he was. And so you never know where it's going to come from. And that's part of the fun of it. And the other stuff, like you get to go to red carpet stuff, but that doesn't stick to your ribs. It really, it's like candy. And you can't eat candy. Candy's not going to set. It's kind of neat for a couple hours. But then, but it's fun. But that's why, that can't be the reason you do it, because that's not going to match. That's not going to live up to what you want. Like you're never going to, if you're doing it for recognition, you're never going to get enough recognition. There's always going to be someone above you. But it's those, it sounds, again, maybe it's a little corny, but it's those day-to-day experiences, overcoming those obstacles, that's what I find deeply sad. And just, I love to act. I just love when you click in and all of a sudden you feel like you're somebody else. It's just, and then if it's comedy, because comedy is kind of like math, you're trying to make sure you get the timing right and all that. That's just so much fun. That's just that's what's addictive to me, not the the attention or whatever. It's because sometimes the people go, "Oh, we saw you," and you're like, "I'm getting attention just because I was on television last night." That's again, I have a friend who's an emergency room anesthesiologist. That's impressive. She said, but we all have, I'm not, but I think one thing that actors can do, I think with, filmmakers, is you can make, I've always had to go make people feel less alone. Because I know that's what I want, all those hours watching television, that was my community. That I felt like, or I remember seeing a Richard Pryor movie when I was going through some rough personal stuff. And his story in the movie made me feel less alone. So you never know who you might touch or reach out to or something. Yeah.
Wow. That's great advice, information. That's awesome, Steve. And thank you for sharing that, because that puts the whole acting genre in perspective for a lot of actors that are out there. For myself, a lot of actors that are struggling and trying to find themselves.
Yeah. Well, because and I made it when I was in my 20s. I was very result oriented. Like someone would say, "You want to do this little play on 10th Avenue in New York?" And I go, "Well, what's it going to lead to?" In my head, I would do that. And I think I may have missed a lot of opportunities of doing something that, for example, I've done films that like maybe a couple thousand people maybe saw, but the experience of it was so remarkable. And I think I wish I'd learned that earlier, because I was always thinking, well, will this get me a better agent or an agent or something? I was very result oriented instead of who are you gonna meet? What are you gonna do? And I think that's more important. And part of it is it's supposed to be fun. It's I remember I went through a period in acting where even when I finally got the job, I was so knotted up with anxiety about doing it right, making sure instead of like, well, no, this is supposed to be a joyful thing. I mean, it's hard to research stuff, and learning lines takes a lot of time. You got to just stay up, your family's gone to sleep and you got to stay up drilling those lines so that they're in your bones. But the bottom line is it's supposed to be fun. And I remember for a while, I've told this story before. I was in New York, I was doing a play off Broadway. And it was a really good play, great role. And it was a comedy, it was kind of a dark comedy. But I was so tight, and this director that had taught me in acting school, he came to see it. And he came backstage after, and he goes, "Steve, that was pretty good. And pardon my language here, but he goes, but it looks like you're shitting grapefruits up there." And because I was like, I was working too hard. It's a very vivid image. But it's true. I was working too hard. I wasn't enjoying myself. He goes, "This character you're doing, you know what to do. Why don't you have some fun?" And all of a sudden I was like, it was really eye-opening, because I was so, trying to live it. And you can still do that, but that's why we've chosen not to work in an office or go into law. We do this because we love it. And I forgot that for a while. And that's another thing, like with, even like She-Hulk, it's like one of my favorite things is like a wardrobe fitting. You get to see these cool things you get to wear. It's like playing dress up when you're a little kid. It's like, I got to wear this $1,000 suit, $2,000 shoes, whatever. Or you get to, one of my biggest dreams is to do a Western, because I want to ride a horse and shoot guns, and, so it can be high art. But anyway, I just think it's important to remember that to do it for the joy of it. And it should be fun. Don't shit a grapefruit.
You heard it, guys. You heard it from the man himself, Steve Coulter. Great advice. That's awesome. I love that. Shed a grapefruit. Just a friendly reminder, you guys, if you have a question for Steve, there is a little question option at the bottom of this live. If you have any acting questions, for acting advice, or if you have any Conjuring questions, I know there's a lot of Conjuring guys out there right now, Conjuring fans. Marvel fanboys, make sure you have, put your questions down there. Also, The Walking Dead. If you have any questions in regards to The Walking Dead, put your questions down there. But he's done many, many, many things. And it's kind of, it's funny how the world works because, let's talk a little bit about The Conjuring. You worked with Patrick and with Vera on that. And both of those actors, very talented, by the way, are also now in the comic universe, respectfully.
Yeah.
Patrick was in Aquaman and Vera was in, I believe, Hawkeye.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Can you talk about how now you've joined them also in this universe?
Well, it's weird because it's kind of funny. They are, the Conjuring happened. I just did one scene in the first one. They shot that in Wilmington, North Carolina. And then you forget about it. I didn't do extraordinary work. I showed up, did my job. And then about a year later, James Wan emailed me and said, there's this role, a lead role in Insidious 2. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then that became sort of the journey. That's what I did, because Patrick was in that as well. And it's really funny because Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are very serious actors, but they're like seventh graders on set. Like whenever I have this running thing, like Patrick and I have this thing of mocking each other and I think part of it is, they do all their preparation. They're very serious, but when you're doing a horror movie that's really intense, you can't do it. It's sort of like in baseball. You can't go up there gripping the bat really hard. You got to be relaxed. So there's a lot of joking in between. And he'll just do stuff like, for example, he directed in the new Insidious, and which I haven't done much horror because I didn't want to do too much of that because you can get sort of stuck, even though the fans are remarkable. But he was directing, so I said, sure, I'll come back as Carl, the medium, whatever. But he would send me pictures of this shitty looking car, and he goes, I found this car for your character. And he goes, I figured you'd drive a piece of crap like that. It's just like, but all that, but again, that quality, if they don't take themselves seriously. And I think that, and it's the same thing of like, when they're talking about the families and stuff like that. Of course, he said, at one point he said, there was some movie that made a ton of money. He said, oh yeah, with that, I built a pool. And I said, yeah, well, with my money from that movie, I think I went grocery shopping. But they're also, it's kind of a neat, again, the less is more, and I don't think they care. I mean, it's not, I think they I guess it's just, to them, it's just a job. And, so it's like they love, I'm sure, I've mocked, I call the Aquaman the fish movie, because your hair was really, really nice. But yeah, and but I guess they're just, it goes back to what I was talking about. They're just really grounded, nice people that don't take themselves too seriously. They take, the fans and the public and all that, and you want to do a really good job. But if you saw how silly they were in between setups, because it's but I think that really helps because you can't, like I said, you can't be all tense, and you have to lessen that tension. And the director, James Wan, is like that as a director. He's not like, oh, we got to get this shot. He's so excited. He's like a teenager. He loves making movies. He loves watching movies. He loves making them. He likes trying new things he's never done before. And that's just, I love working with people like that because it's again, we're not, we're making TV shows and movies. It's kind of, we're very grateful and it's fun and it's not rocket science. So.
I love how you said, acting, you have to relate to it like a baseball player, not holding the bat too hard, not gripping the bat. I love that, I love that metaphor, analogy, or,
well,
I love that because, I think I've heard you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you wouldn't pursue this acting career, you would, the other career you would have pursued you would be a major league baseball player?
But I don't have any of the skills necessary. I love baseball. As a kid, I was convinced, even though it wasn't that good, because we had a backyard and it was a neighborhood with a lot of kids the same age. We played baseball every day. I woke up at 7 o'clock. You could run out and throw. You'd throw the ball until you couldn't see it anymore. and I watched. I grew up with around the Yankees and the Mets in New York, and then I was in Cleveland. So I love baseball. But like when I moved to South America, I was in Little League, but in South America, on the coast, baseball was very big, and in the Caribbean. But down in Cali, which is in the central part of it wasn't big until the Pan American. I'm going way off on a tangent. Long story short, I didn't play baseball for 4 years or 5 years. By the time I got back to the States, the curveball, kids were throwing curveballs. And I didn't like slowly adjust to it. Even if I had, I wasn't good enough. But I just, if I could pick a job other than an actor, I'd want to play Major League Baseball. That would, yeah. Or be in a band. That would be it. So.
Nice. Yeah, being in the Dominican must have been an experience with the base, all the farm systems they have out there, right?
It was weird because it's funny because in Colombia, everyone was playing soccer. I remember playing soccer with a tin can, playing soccer with a rolled up piece of tape. And you go, and it's so funny, not to get into a whole sociological thing, but like poverty in South America is beyond imagination compared to poverty. At least poverty here, most people they live somewhere, except for homeless, obviously. But the level of poverty in countries like the Dominican Republic, in Haiti, in Colombia, is mind-numbing. But then you see kids out just literally playing soccer. In the Dominican Republic, as kids, you see kids playing stickball and playing in any kind of vacant lot. Kids are playing baseball, so they're playing it. So yeah, but we could talk for 2 hours about.
Yeah, I'm a huge baseball guy too. So I've been a Dodger fan since the early '80s. So definitely, I wanted to talk to you. And back to The Conjuring. It's based off, the Lorraine and Ed, Warren, books and their real life experiences. I was lucky enough to be at WonderCon, which is a convention out here in Anaheim, where, the creepy puppet, James Wan, him and I believe it was Patrick and Vera, and I remember Lorraine being part of the panel before she passed. And when I saw the preview, I was just blown away. Now, your character, Father Gordon, is such a comforting character. When we see your character come on screen, we feel a little bit of comfort because it's just evil spirits and what have you. But, coming into that role, what research did you do? Did you know the history about that Conjuring house?
Well, I did the main stuff I would do. I did a lot of investigating, like the legitimacy of exorcisms and stuff like that, because it's sort of to ground it in a real thing. And it's kind of creepy because there are a lot of actual videos of exorcisms, which is one of the reasons I resisted doing horror stuff, because people go, "Oh, is this your favorite genre?" I'm like, no, because horror movies scare the crap out of me. It's like, I'm serious, because especially stuff about evil, like I know there's a movie out now called Smile. I really want to watch it, but I'm terrified. I'd have to watch it, get my wife or someone to watch it with me, because and The Conjuring, and especially if the movie's done well, like you think back to The Exorcist and The Omen, and what James Wan does, he really crafts it well so that they're believable, and it's terrifying. So the research I would do in reading is about the genuine real investigations into this. And so I read some of the Warren stories, and about what because they said 90% of the stuff they investigated was not evil. It was a pipe, rattling. It was, someone playing practical jokes. So, and they were the real, that was scary too, because they're the real thing. And it was kind of, and nothing ever really scary happened on any of the sets. I know Vera one time, I think it was in the first Conjuring, I think she had bruises all over her arms. She woke up for no reason, and that was kind of odd. But James Wan always has a real priest bless the set the first day of shooting. And we did that on, I think we did that, was it Annabelle? Or maybe it was Conjuring. I think it was Annabelle. Annabelle, there was a priest there, and he did exorcism, so I talked to him about it. Because actually in Conjuring 3, I had to perform an exorcism. And you want to be able to believe what you're doing and not do it. Anything in acting, you get in trouble if you do anything generally. You know, that's the thing about going back to, you know, not gripping the bat too tightly. Those baseball players have prepared a lot. You know, they take, you know, batting practice for hours, and they condition their bodies and all this, so then they can relax when they step in the box. And that's, I think, our job as an actor, is to do as much research, and relevant research, not, you know, not just silly like, oh, I'm gonna write a, you know, a life story. It's like, well, can you act that? So that I wanted to do that, so I would just sort of have that in me, knowing that this is what this guy does. He has these supplies. He has this bag that he carries with him, and I know what all the stuff is in there and what it's for, and that I do it enough so I could believe in it, you know. And I may believe in it less when I'm done, but so when you do it, you can totally believe it, so that you're not acting it, you're actually behaving like that person. And this is his job, so it was kind of fun. The last one I got to do stuff. Usually he's sort of like, well, here's where there's a devil in England. Good luck. Give me a call when you come back. I'll be here eating my snacks. He's kind of like Commissioner Gordon in Batman, I've said. You know, he just sort of finds the evil and then go, well, I'm not going to do it, but you two, go ahead.
Hey, doing exorcisms could be hazardous too. I mean,
Yeah.
Are you doing okay? Is your head okay?
Yeah. And that was so funny. Those dishes were all digitally, you know, they did have the blood and stuff. It was really kind of cool. It's like when it was always fun to watch the movie, because it's like, how did they do that? Because there weren't no dishes flying off the thing. That's all. So.
As an actor, how do you get out of that zone when there's an intense scene or very emotional scene? You know, I've done some roles myself where it takes me a few minutes to get back to my normal Julio self. You know, what is there a method that you do, or what do you do?
So the only time I had to do is who was it? What was the film? It was a character that was filled with a lot of shame. So I had to kind of, and not methody, but you have to, like, it's a character that they see everything in their life through regret and shame. So if there's an event that happens, they go, well, what should I have done? And that took a while. I remember I had like stomach problems doing that, because it was kind of long term. And because usually it sounds, you know, and the actors I admire, and I also think whatever you need to do, as long as you're not harming someone, if you need to stay in that character on set 24/7, if that's what you need to do, as long as you're not harming anybody, you know. I don't care what your process is. And there's, you know, but there's times, like some of the best actors I know. I just did last year Oppenheimer, and Cillian Murphy is playing Oppenheimer. Really intense character, and with a real, you know, he has to, first of all, he has an American dialect, but not only that, he has it's kind of an interesting way. Oppenheimer was there's so much going on in his head. And I was sort of expecting him to stay in character this whole day that I was shooting with him. But as soon as it cut, he'd break out and he's talking in his Irish accent, really friendly, very light. But the scene is more, you know, we're doing a scene where I can't tell you what it was about, but it was really high consequences, high stakes for humanity. And yet, but he's such a professional. It's like, you know, you can pop in and out of it. And I think the more you're prepared, then you can do that. You don't have to, you know, but there are certain circumstances where, you know, like, for example, you know, Daniel Day-Lewis as Lincoln. I can understand why he would need to stay, because that's such a complete transformation. But I found, yeah, there's sometimes the only time I really felt it was a little tough was a time where, like I said, I had to just condition myself to look for, what am I ashamed of? So you're tapping into your old shame, your regrets. But it gets kind of fun too when, you know, Josh Duhamel plays my son in Shotgun Wedding, the J-Lo movie. And so I kept thinking of him as my son. And I don't mean like as an actor, he's my son. But I was I probably would have been fond of him anyway, but I was very fond of him, and I felt very protective of him because he's my son. So you try to, that's the fun of acting, is you get to do, you go, okay, I'm going to put, you know, this filter, you know, the same thing. I remember one time I was playing a prosecutor in this film, and the guy who's like, it's weird because in the real story, it was about Leo Frank, the guy who was lynched in the turn of the century. And having done all the research, I knew, Steve Coulter knew that this guy was innocent. But the guy I'm playing was convinced that this guy was a monster and a menace to children, to society. So I didn't want to talk to the guy, the actor, because I couldn't like him. I had to really, really, and anything he did, I would get annoyed with. I would just go like, oh, he's so selfish. Now, he wasn't. He was a really great guy, but I looked at it through that filter. And that's kind of fun, where you just go, okay, I need, someone who's playing your wife, I need to think of them as my wife, not as and sometimes it's fun because it's like, I don't know, working with Tatiana Maslany, I already liked her so it was a little tricky because my character in She-Hulk is annoyed with her. But what helped is that it wasn't just annoyance. It was like having a daughter that pisses you off, but you still love her. So I think my natural affection for her as an artist and as a person prevented me from just being this bully, mean boss. It was like, don't do that. Oh, but you're going to do it anyway, aren't you? Because that's what you do. So I'm a big believer in using, and I didn't used to be, well, you could call it method, but using your own feelings as a starting point and your own thoughts, and then it links to the imagination, and it becomes this really cool mix that is, where 1 + 1 can equal 4, where it becomes something that you weren't expecting. And that's when it gets really kind of exciting, because the character's in the script. It's not like, but your experiences, because no one is like you, Julio. No one has had the heartbreaks that you've had. No one has the goals that you have. And no one has the secrets you have. No one has the, dreams and the bad things you've done and the regrets you've had. And that's what makes you unique. Whereas if you're playing a cop, and you go, I'm going to act like a cop, and like, you can have a general idea. But if you were a cop, like I had one of my best friends, this guy, he was a homicide detective for like 25 years, but you would think he's a Sunday school teacher. He's the gentlest guy. He loves doing sculpture and music. And if you were casting, you might not cast him as a homicide detective. So that's what makes things, I think that's really important to start off with. Well, if I was the most, the most powerful lawyer in Los Angeles, what would I, but then you have this wonderful writing that gives you the character, but, it's your soul doing it. Otherwise, you act generally. You act like a lawyer, or you act like a cop, or you act like a priest, and it's not specific. And then people watching it go, I think I'm going to see what's on Hulu. It's somehow that's the best actors I've had. That's what they bring their soul to it. So they make it.
Wow, great acting advice, Steve. Oh my God, that's so insightful. Thank you for sharing that. You've worked with so many actors, talented actors through your career. Before I finish that question, guys, if you have a question for Steve, please put your questions down on the bottom. There should be a little question mark icon. Any question you have about acting or any of the roles that he's been in, any of the projects, please put your questions. We'll get to those in a minute. But I wanted to ask you, you've worked with such talented actors, some of the greatest actors out there, De Niro, Pacino, you work with Kevin Costner. I believe you worked with Denzel Washington, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I did.
So when you land those roles, and you're going to be in scene with these amazing, award-winning, Oscar-winning actors, how do you prep for that? When you go on set, do you give it that swag, like, hey, I'm a veteran, I'm good, I know what or do you still fanboy when you run into these guys?
Yeah, and that's what I always compare stuff to baseball. It's like, if you're gonna play with Derek Jeter, inside you're going, that's Derek Jeter, and I remember I was working the first time I got to work with Al Pacino twice, and the first time we have this scene, and it's like my character is going toe to toe with him. He's accusing my character of doing something he didn't do, and so and of course I've done my preparation. I know the lines, I know the story, I know I've learned enough about it to not know some stuff, so I get surprised, whatever. So I'm being really professional on the outside, but on the inside, I'm the 12-year-old that saw The Godfather in New York City, and it was like, who's this guy? Dog Day. You know, I grew up watching Dog Day Afternoon and Scarecrow and all those movies. So yeah, there is a big fan, and I don't. God, I hope I still always have it, because I got to work with Robert Duvall, and you're like, these are the people that. That's why I wanted to do it, is because of seeing these people work. Um, so yeah, so on the outside, it's very professional, I hope, but on the inside is absolute fanboy and insecurity, terror. I remember when I did The Wizard of Lies with De Niro in New York, and they flew me up to New York to they're doing a reading of the script, a table read. And I thought they hadn't met me in person. They had my tape and audition. And I was like 10 years younger than the character I was playing. And I was convinced, like they were doing the reading at De Niro. He owns a loft over one of his restaurants in Soho. And I went to a little coffee shop nearby, and I got there early. And I was like, well, enjoy this now, because as soon as they meet you, they're going to realize, oh my God, we made a mistake. And I've been acting at that point for like 25, 30 years. You'd think you'd be, but once I get in there, and again, I'm being very professional, and my character had this little monologue, and it's really such, that's one of the reasons, again, to personalize and be present as an actor with your preparation. Like, for example, while I'm reading this as the character, and I'm totally into the character, but another part of my brain is like, Robert effing De Niro is 2 seats away from me watching me act. That's insane. Because again, it's that 13-year-old, the guy who saw Taxi Driver, or when I first saw Mean Streets or something. What is fun though is when you have like a character, like I had just seen the new Captain America, the new series that had Anthony Mackie.
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Falcon and Winter Soldier. So I just seen that when I shot this movie for Netflix last year, and I have a scene with Anthony Mackie. It's my first day on set. But my character is like the head of the CIA, and he's a motherfucker. He's mean. He's got so much power that he could just say, take him out. And Anthony Mackie has this really loud character, and I just walked. My first scene line, I think, is, sit down. You're going to do what I say. So, the first day of any shoot, you're nervous because it's like going to school for the first day. You're nervous, and if you're meeting, like I just seen Falcon, and so I was like, oh, this guy's a pretty cool actor. He's very funny, but you can use that confidence as the character to overcome your nervousness as being on the set. Because, your first day on set, you're like, I hope they don't think they've made a mistake in casting me and all that.
Do you run lines with, like, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, do you, when you're on set, like, when you're on the smaller projects, you engage your fellow actor and you're like, hey dude, can we run the lines? Hey, let's run the lines. Can we run the lines? Or when you're doing the blocking, do you engage like those big A-list actors like that? Do you do the same thing?
Especially when I was starting out, you let it come from them. I wouldn't go to like Denzel Washington and go, hey man, you want to run lines? He'd be like, fuck off. But I remember, actually, the first job I did, I forget, the actor it was some TV movie, and I was so nervous because it was like my first job, really. But the actress who was like a TV star, it was Judith Light, she was like, who's the boss, whatever. So she was a big star at the time. And she took me aside and she said, would you mind running lines? And I was like, yeah, sure. But yeah, most times you get to level 2 where some people don't want to run lines. Like I used to want to run lines a lot, but now you try to embrace the terror of, yeah, you know them, but there's a part of your brain is going, do you really know them? Do you really know what you can do? But that helps you, because if you know it too, like I used to over prepare, especially when I did theater, I over prepared. So there wasn't as much spontaneity. And I would sort of execute a performance instead of living in it. Because if you're living in it, then, because it's all for the audience, whether it's a play or a TV show or movie, it's got to be happening right then, so you don't go, oh, that's an actor. Because if they step out of the story, then you've not done your job. It's like, okay, I know I should think that this guy's scary, but he's not really that scary. So that's your job. And So yeah, but yeah, most of the time people will go, "Do you want to run through the lines?" Especially like it's usually oddly enough in the makeup trailer, or when we did Second Wedding. My wife in it is Jennifer Coolidge, and the director had told us there's a little section of a scene coming up that he said we could play a little bit with it. So she said, let's go, and we improvised in the little dressing area different things that might come up, and like, oh, that might be a fun way to go. So then, yeah, because everyone wants it to be good, and but yeah, I never when I was first starting out, I never would have said, hey, you want to run lines? Because I didn't want to get yelled at.
And that's one of my worst fears. If I do land something big, and and I'm in a scene with a big A-list actor, I want it to be so perfect. And you're right, you over prepare sometimes.
Yeah.
And but I love what you're saying. Just relax. Don't hold the bat too tight. Don't grip the bat too tight. They'll come to you.
Everyone's scared. When you're at that level, when you're like, let's say you're the leading actor, they're just as nervous because they have more pressure on them. And so everyone thinks, and I remember hearing, I didn't hear it firsthand. I've never met him. Dustin Hoffman was talking about, this is years ago. He said, after every job, I think, or when he gets every job, he goes, well, this is going to be the job where they find out I don't know what I'm doing. And but I've read that,
I love that.
A lot of great authors. I remember I think it was like Aaron Sorkin talking about every time he starts, he feels like he doesn't know anything. And I guess that's kind of it keeps you motivated. As long as you can. I'm not a big believer in being miserable as an artist. I think you should enjoy it, but it's weird. You got to work your butt off in order to enjoy it. But it's like anything in life. If you don't prepare for something, it's not worth it. Like if you don't, you got to earn that happiness, I think.
Such great advice. Thank you so much for that, Steve.
Old Julio, I got no time to think about this stuff.
Hey, I just got to say this. The most expensive red wine is the most vintage wine, right? We get better as we age.
Hopefully, or just, or we start spouting nonsense. There's that.
I got to go back to the Jennifer Coolidge. You referenced her. I just got to ask, and this is just a joke, okay? Did you ask her for a massage?
I did not.
She was amazing in Seinfeld, by the way.
Yeah, that's another. I was a huge fan of hers because going back to Best in Show and all that stuff, and yeah. See, that's one of the funny about you get to work with people again, I go back to baseball. It's like I've always wanted to play baseball with certain people, and I got to play baseball with Jennifer Coolidge, and so yeah.
She's amazing on the White. I think it's called White Lotus.
White Lotus. Yeah. Oh
and of course, you guys all know her as Miss. Oh my God, I'm forgetting her name right now. But she was in American Pie.
Yeah, that's what.
Right.
Yes.
She's where the famous word came. The famous acronym MILF came from.
She came up. She struggled a lot, and as every actor, 90% of actors had a real rough go of it. I mean, some people I know, actors that worked right away when they got out of school or whatever, but then they had, it's a hard job. It's so subjective. And it's, you could get, if you're a lawyer, they're not going to like, well, we really like your resume, but you're just not tall enough. Or you look too much like the head of the company. Whereas that, acting is so much out of your control.
Yeah, and I can relate to that. And I'm sorry to interrupt again, but I can relate to that because right now with this face, a lot of my roles are, the abusive dad, the the gangster, the cartel guy.
Why? You seem like a nice guy.
Another actor that I interviewed, one of my buddies, I asked him, should I go for those roles, the typecast roles? He's like, you know what? Be the best cholo you can be the best cartel guy you can be. Someone's gonna notice, and they're gonna put you in something else.
Well, I played in the '90s. it's not a joke. I played so many cops and deputies. We just come in with one line going, "You're under arrest for the rape of Parky Sasser," and you just, yeah, you just have to, and yeah, you do the best, you know, job you can at that. And I think that goes too for like, I worked, God, I drove trucks, I worked in restaurants, I was a busboy, I was a dishwasher, I worked in a warehouse, I worked as a florist, I was a bouncer at a folk club. And I would say to myself, well, you chose this job, you agreed to do this job, do it the best you can do it. And I wasn't always true to that, but I remember if I started complaining, I would quit and do something else because I don't know, life's just really short. But it's really hard because like I have so many friends that are so talented and they can't get arrested or they went on to do something else. And it's not fair. It's not and some of the stories of, I mean, like I said, I've had 3 or 4 times where I've come this close to quitting because it just wasn't worth the humiliation because the profession is not fair.
Yeah.
There's a group of friends of mine. There's this guy named David Silverman and Tommy Houseworth and Scott Maxwell, Chad Pittard, all really good actors. Tommy was more of a writer and he kept writing. But, these guys were like, I mean, I saw Chad did this, there's a play called Orphans. It's off Broadway and they did it here. And he's just like really, really good. And this friend of mine, David Silverman, incredible actor. We've been friends. And all of these, I know these guys for 30 years, but, and again, and still, I'm not like, I still got to make a living. I'm not like, I still, I haven't worked in about a month or so. But I know guys, I have a friend of mine hasn't worked in like 3-4 years. And he's a really good actor and a really good human being. And it's like, why the hell? So it can drive you kind of crazy. Yeah. And I think it's one of those, they do a lot of temp, and I have a lot of friends that they got like temp jobs and they ended up doing really good at it because actors are so motivated and pretty smart and engaged. They get promoted in these temp jobs and they end up doing that because it's really hard. Like we talked earlier about having kids. I remember, in the 90s, my daughter was like 4 and I had an 11-year-old stepson. And I remember sitting on a Sunday night going, I don't have any work coming in. I'm not going to be able to pay the mortgage this month. But somehow it's like, the dive bombers and you pull up at the last minute. It works. But it's hard on the soul at times. Especially the unfairness of it. Like I said, with someone else, or some of the dick, pardon my French, that's just a lot of person, and they're working all the time. You're like, why? I'm a nice person. At least I try to be. Why are they working? Or, yeah, I remember, I got to work at the Guthrie Theater when I was like 23, really prestigious. And then 2 months later, I get back and I'm a busboy at a restaurant on the Lower East Side of New York. And the casting director I know is like, oh, what happened to you? So it's like it's hard.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up because, there's a lot of struggling actors out there that are extremely talented, that I've had, the opportunity to work with. And I'm thinking to myself, why isn't this guy like on a sitcom or something? And, it all goes to the casting part, right? The casting process. Sometimes the director or the producer might not, they like your acting, they like how good you are, how you nailed the role, but that's not exactly the look or, the feel that they were looking for that particular role. And a lot of actors, it's when they hear that rejection, it's hard to take. And, I myself have, I've told my agent, she sends me commercials for the same company. I'm not going to name the company. And I'm like, you know what? I've done numerous auditions for this company. Obviously they don't want me, but they keep, accepting my submission. So I'm like, I just can't take it personal, and I just got to keep grinding and keep.
Like you, you can't. I say don't take it personally, but boy, first starting out, I took it very, very personally. It's hard because you see, especially when you need a job to feed yourself. There's that too. And also just, or a role comes in that you go, my God, if I get this will change my life. And I've always compared it a lot to, Charlie Brown and the football. It's like, I'm not going to go kick the football. Lucy's going, oh, no, this part, really good. And you go, no, I'm not going to do it. And you go out on your back. And it's really,
it's hard. Yeah.
big.
And thank you so much for that. That's great advice to all you struggling actors out there. Amazing advice and words from, the talented Mr. Steve Coulter. We're gonna get to some questions. I don't know, Steve, can you see that question down there from Michael 2H?
Yes. It says, you really want to do a Western? Yes, I do. I would do a Western for free, Michael 2H. Any other dream projects? I'd like to be in a baseball movie, but I'm getting too old now. Like, I got to be, I did a show, Brockmire, but I was a baseball manager. So, yeah, but I didn't get to be on the field and play. I got to sit in the dugout, which is really exciting. But I got to do, when we did, what was it? There's an HBO movie called Paterno, and they went out to Citi Field in New York, which is, they tore down Shea Stadium, which broke my heart. But we got to go in the players' entrance at Shea, at Citi Field, which is where the Mets play. And so I got to be, in the clubhouse and all that. Oh, God. Anyway, so to answer your question, Michael, is I'd like to be a baseball movie. But I'd like to be 8 years old again, too. And so.
Yeah, in regards to...
Oh, I see this. Wait, is this Pittard? Remember I said I had some friends of mine, Chad Pittard. I don't know if is that him? Or if it's if that's Chad, how long did it take Steve to grow that rad stash? It took too long. And it's I had a beard in the winter because in this profession the holidays are pretty slow, so I tend to grow a beard. And I just shaved off the beard and I kept the mustache because I had free time. It took a long time.
Nice. The next one is just a hi, Steve, from Alexander Banson.
Hello, Alex. Hello there. That was
easy. We got a question from The Conjuring Tom. Is that right?
Will the Father Gordon come back in Conjuring 4? I have no idea. I hope so. It's kind of fun that it's like every 3 years you get a call, and it's like, yeah, who's going to say no? I'd be like, I would say, go ahead and kill Father Gordon. But no. Well, that's the thing about Walking Dead is like when they said we're going to kill you, and I was like, oh man, because it's a job. But they said, but it's going to be really good, and it was. So if you're going to die,
not Reg. Alexandra, you're my safe haven. We got a question from Latino Actor 33.
Let's see. As an actor, how can I choose an agent manager? Yeah, that's a tricky thing. And I just thought Tommy Houseworth joined. Oh my! Tommy's one of the guys I was talking about. One of the little our clan of. We used to go see a lot of movies together, like 4 or 5 of us. Went to see Fight Club, and oh my God, a lot of memories. Anyway, how to choose it? I think. God, who knows? I'm old, like I said. But here's an example. When I was in New York starting out, I wanted this certain agent because I think he represented Kevin Kline, Al Pacino. And I got this agent. And he was kind of a big agent, but he did nothing for me. And I didn't feel any chemistry. I was very intimidated and scared because I didn't know how to do it. I was 21 years old. But there had been another agent who was a smaller agent I really liked the guy, but my stupid head went, well, he's from a smaller agency, and I should have gone with him. So the advice would be is if you feel real connection, and mainly it's got to be someone who really believes in you, like thinks you're not just like your, because I've had agents that I was friends with, I became great friends and I love them as people, but they didn't really help my career, because if you're really busting your butt and they're not helping you. So I would say someone who really believes in you. That's the most important thing. However it comes about, if they see you in a play or whatever, don't just get an agent. Because a lot of people, like I said, I was signed with an agent and it did me no good whatsoever. So whereas, if I had an agent, you have an agent that with a smaller agency or something, go with that. But yeah, someone who really believes in you. That's so. I guess it's kind of obvious, but yeah.
Great advice. That's great advice. Thank you, Steve. We got a gentleman by the name of Robin. Or I don't know if it's a
Oh,
gentleman. I
Robinson,
apologize.
they are fellow podcasters. Get them off. Get them off right now. No, they're in New Jersey. I think they're, yeah, why are they in New Jersey? What's it? Oh, Tommy Hasbro, too grounded and humble in this crazy business. Shut up, Tommy. People, oh, you know what does keep you humble is friends like Tommy, because I've known him for 30 years. Back when my daughter was born in 1993, I was like, what, 33? Tommy ran a sort of production company that did a lot of commercials, corporate videos, like live events, scripted events, videos. And he was a good friend. I said, Tommy, I'll do any job because I got to feed this baby. And Tommy will always remind me if I've gotten some like quote unquote big job. Back in, I think it was like 95, it was in Georgia, and there was the Fire Ant Festival. I forget what town in Georgia. And I played the Fire Ant King with little antennas. I think I had a turtleneck or something. So if I ever get too big for my britches, Tommy will remind me that I was the Fire Ant King at the Fire Ant Festival in like out of McDonough, Georgia or something. Yeah, you got, like I said, you better be humble in this business because again, we're not doing it. Whenever I see actors that are, and 99% of the actors I've worked with are really kind and grateful and humble, from the biggest stars and stuff, you know. But like I've worked with, and they will remain nameless, like actors that like they treat like background actors poorly, or if you're not at this, you know, on the call sheet, you know, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're down on the call sheet, they won't talk to anyone unless you're in the main cast. And that's like, again, what did you save somebody's life in a fire? You've got the lead on a television program, so it's like you're not. Yeah, you better be humble because you're just yeah. When you die, they're not gonna be like, oh yeah, wow, he was on a lot of television shows. Big deal.
Yeah, that's great advice. Definitely stay humble, you guys. If you guys land a lead in a TV or movie or whatever project, stay humble, guys. Don't if those extras or background actors, treat them all like you want to be treated. Don't. That's great advice.
Yeah, it's because there is a kind of weird kind of caste system, and I remember I'll never forget Kevin. I worked for I think a day, maybe two, on a movie called Mr. Brooks. This is in the '90s, and I played his family lawyer, and we were doing a scene where he was not the director, but he was kind of directing it because he was the producer. And it was a scene where we were shooting, we'd done all the dialogue, but then he wanted this sort of a montage of, my character was defending his daughter and we're at his house. And he was just throwing all these little things at me, little curveballs, like, do this, can you do that? Think about this, do that, do that. And it was really fun because it was, again, going back to baseball, it was like hitting, trying to catch grounders and stuff. And later in the day, we were shooting at this house in, where was it? Shreveport, Louisiana. And I had sometimes when you're finished shooting your stuff, they'll keep you around in case they need to go back, whatever. So I got it a newspaper. Remember newspapers? You'd actually hold them in your hand.
Yeah.
And I had a newspaper from I think probably USA Today. They used to drop you, at hotels every morning. And I was sitting off in some room with a lot of this stuff stored, and I was sitting against the wall reading my little USA Today. And all of a sudden, someone plops out right next to me. It was Kevin Costner. And this is like hours after the scene. He goes, I just wanted to thank you. He said, I threw a lot of shit and a lot of curveballs at you, but you hit every one, and I really, really appreciated that. So that's the kind of thing. He did not have to do that. And it's so stuff like that you remember. It's like, because he started out, he was a crew on industrial films in LA. So he came up, through the ladder. And whereas then you work sometimes with actors that's like, if you're not in the main cast, they won't. I saw an actor treating, okay, I won't tell you what movie. It was the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Who had like 2 lines, but they're really important. Was there just there for the day. He was probably early 20s, and it was really important to the script. It's an important scene, And you could tell he hadn't worked very much. He's very excited, and he has the scene is with one of the stars of the movie. And he's sitting, you have a cast waiting area, so he's sitting there. And the main actor just wouldn't even look at him, wouldn't even, and it's just like, that guy, don't you remember what it was like when you're nervous, you're coming on a set for the first night? Because when you come in, it's different if you're working on a movie or TV show for weeks, you become part of the thing. But when you come in on one day, you're like, not only are you the new kid in school, you're the new kid who's not even going to be around. So it's like, you're nervous, you're, insecure, all that. So your job is to, if you're in the cast, is welcome that person, make him feel, because you already feel like, yeah. Because I did so many of the day player stuff where you're just there for a day. And when you're young, you think you got to make an impression. Then you realize, well, I'll just do your job. But it does make a difference when somebody, again, Kevin Costner goes out of his way to treat you like a human being. And it makes a difference. It really makes a difference.
Kevin Costner, Cal State Fullerton alum, huge baseball guy.
Yeah.
Everything he does in regards to baseball all his movies are amazing. Bull Durham, Field of Dreams. It's just
yeah, those are my favorite movies. It's like, yeah.
That's amazing. Amazing advice.
How long you said you started acting during the pandemic? It was like, which is what great timing that was, huh? But
yeah, it was, and thank God for self-tapes because I live about 70 miles east of Los Angeles.
Oh, man.
So I don't want to drive in to do, and you probably prefer in-person auditions. I prefer, the self-tapes because of the traffic. Yeah. 2 hours there, 2 hours back. No, thank you.
But the thing about being in a room is the fear is gone when you're doing self-taping, which your human instinct is like, yeah, I don't mind avoiding things I don't like, but it's less because of that terror of being in person. Once you, like you said, it's hard once you finally get there and all that. I miss that because it's I think you're better because you're the stakes are higher. So, but yeah, it also I live in Atlanta, so I don't have to drive from like Pasadena to Santa Monica, which could take 7 days. So yeah.
Yeah, I told my agent, if it's in person, if it's all the way in Venice, no, thank you.
I'd be like, oh, hey.
I've done it. I've done in person. I've done those second callbacks, second callbacks where I was this close to landing it and I didn't get it, and I just spent a whole day driving to LA.
Well, in Atlanta, because now Atlanta is a real hub of film and TV production, but that's just the last 10, 15 years. We used to have to drive because there was nothing going on in Georgia except once in a while a Lifetime movie and some reality stuff. We used to have to drive to Wilmington, North Carolina, or drive to New Orleans, and you'd go for just a general. So you drive to Wilmington like 7 hours, 8 hours, go into a room for 5 minutes, and then drive all the way back thinking, how badly did I mess that up? And let me play it in my head and try to drive it. And then you get a call back. You have to drive all the way back. And that was just like, oh, man.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Atlanta's a hotbed now for production.
Yeah.
I believe you worked on some Tyler Perry productions as well.
Yeah,
right?
it was weird. I was his head writer for a year. I was on staff as a writer for 2 years, and then he made me his head writer for a year. Which is a whole, because I was doing a lot of those, the day players. I played a lot of deputies, and I was like, and then I made my own short movie that did well. Then I wrote a feature script that won like an award, and that got the attention of him. Am I speaking correctly? And so yes, I wrote for him for a few years, and he was the one that he really got a lot of the stuff going here. He said, well, I don't have to do this in Hollywood. But then the main thing that they passed a major tax incentive here, thanks to people like Shay Griffin and Rick Reitz and Wilbur Fitzgerald and a couple other people. And that's what really drew people, all the production here. And that was crazy. It's like LA, there's like location signs all over town, just like Los Angeles. So it's kind of crazy.
I see a lot of postings for jobs out there, for acting jobs. It's definitely, LA used to be the Mecca, no longer. Atlanta, Toronto, Vancouver. You know, you mentioned the Carolinas, Wilmington, North Carolina. One of my buddies even told me, "Hey, man, why don't you move out to England?" I'm like, "Why would I do that?" He's like, "Hey, man, you know, at every casting, it's the same 5 Latin
Wow.
actors out here."
Well, you know,
He
there's
goes, he goes,
yeah. It was a little bit like Atlanta for a while. And like there's a friend of mine, Vince Catalyst, who I think he's from the Philippines, but knowing the ignorance of producers, he's played Chinese guys, Singapore, Vietnamese, China, Japan, whatever. Yeah, because there just weren't a lot of Asian actors. So no, but it's kind of true. I don't know, in Atlanta there's not a ton of Latino
yeah,
actors.
yeah. I'm close to Vancouver. I mean, I'm only 2.5 hours
Yeah.
on a plane to Vancouver. So if something comes up in Vancouver, hey, I'm ready to go. Even Atlanta, I'll go to Atlanta. But before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about one particular scene, and you also have it on your reel. Um, the famous panty scene uh, from Brockmire. Can you talk about that?
That well we those those are Victoria's Secret panties, I'll have you know. And it was hard because it was in the middle of July and we're on Main Street. I forget where we were, like in Covington, Georgia or something. Really hot. I'm not talking about my appearance. Um, it was very awkward for the first 5 minutes because it was you're taking off your pants and you're wearing ladies' underwear in front of about 150 people. But after that, it was great because you're like, first, well, that's an example where you hide in the characters. The character doesn't care. You know, Steve cared a lot at first. Steve was like, oh, okay. But then you're like, it's 98 degrees outside with humidity, and these are very comfortable underwear. So it was very terrifying at first, but then one of the most, I could see why, it was very comfortable. I'm very proud of that. And
The line you said though, Steve, was that improvised or was that?
letting the like kittens out of the box or whatever, that was improvised.
Yeah, don't want to let the kittens coming out of the basket.
Yes, that was. Yeah, I would say something different every time because I was like, one of these. I said one time I think we don't want to get the Danish out of them.
Oh my God, I was.
Yeah, that was
Uh,
very comfortable. I highly recommend wearing ladies' underwear in a small Georgia town in July.
your wife was. Did your wife have any feedback on that scene?
She actually, here's the story, because my wife is Mary Kraft, who is one of the, I'm not saying this because she's my wife, because I thought this way before I ever, one of the funniest people I've ever met. She was hired on Brockmire, I think it was the second season. She played like a real low-end hooker, like, a Walmart kind of hooker, who he gets Brockmire to deflower his assistant. And they liked her so much, the next season, they brought her back, and this never happens, as a completely different character as the lesbian wife of Brockmire's sister, like a very butch, kind of tough. So that's just a little segue. But she was so good. I said, Mary, this doesn't happen. They did that on what was it, Deadwood, where what's his name played two different characters. I said, Mary, they will hire another actor, but they must have really, really liked it. Yeah, she's ridiculous. She was also in Atlanta. She did that famous episode of Atlanta where it was like the pretend talk show, and she played the head of like the transgender organization that sort of confronted Paperboy, whatever. Anyway, so that's just a little plug from my wife.
I think we have one. That's awesome. Let's get to one more question that we have here. Let's see.
Let's see. Let's see. Are all virtual casting calls I see posted on social media legit? Boy, I don't know. I'd say probably not. I mean, it's, I'd especially, like, if you're a woman, be really careful because, the business has opened up because there's like, what's the Actors Access and stuff. A lot of independent films, little short films and stuff can post casting stuff. I always, because my daughter, she's a young woman living in New York. She's very careful about, like if they're saying, oh yeah, we're doing a casting on, East 7th Street at 8 o'clock on Friday. It's like, I don't know if you should do that. Be very careful. But most is, and that's the kind of stuff, especially if you're just starting out, and if you want to do film and TV, you need to have a reel. Get in, like when I was in New York, I did NYU student films, I did Columbia student films. You don't get paid a cent. Maybe they'll buy you breakfast or something. That's one thing I did that served me really well in terms of, again, I didn't lead to any jobs, but first of all, I met really great people, because you're working with people who are just doing it for the love of their students at 2 really good film schools. And you work with great people, because and you'll get some footage for your reel as well. So I highly recommend that. But yeah, and to that question, I'd say just be very careful, because some, I'm sure, are not legit. It's just the nature of human beings. Human beings can be great, but boy, they can suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've already gotten one flagged. One, I believe it was from Casting Networks. I got a self-tape request, but then I got an email the next day that particular casting was fake. Yeah. So they did send me an email saying, hey, don't submit, this is fake. Yeah. So thank God for for them vetting all these the posts.
Especially women, but also if there's anyone asking for money from you or any kind, which should set up red flags. Sometimes someone has some credits and they use that, or they lie about it. But you never pay to audition. You never pay. If there's an agency that says, here's this upfront fee, you pay. It's like, no. So there's some agency that say you have to get photographs taken from this photographer, and it's going to cost. Yeah.
We got a question down there from J-Mac. J-Mac is there, and Latino actor said also thank God for self-tapes. But J-Mac has a question. His question is, what's your best advice for choosing an agent?
Yeah, I said earlier, is find someone that believes in you, and not necessarily how big the agency is. I mean, if the agency is terrible, and you can that's the thing, you can do research or find other people that are there. But the best thing is find someone that really believes in you. That's because, like I said, I made the mistake of going with agents that didn't believe in me, but they had a great reputation. So it's sort of like dating a girl that's like really popular, but she won't hold your hand. So yeah.
And this particular actor that just asked this question, J-Mac, he was on Shameless, I believe.
Oh, cool. That's a great show. Yeah, just find someone who really believes in you. It doesn't have to be a big agency. It can be a smaller agency. Or maybe someone who's at like one of the big agencies, but it's just maybe on the ground level of something. Then they're hungrier too. But the bottom line is, and follow your gut. If your gut says like, oh, this is a really nice person, but I don't think they can help me. Or, follow it. Gut's a really good. Oftentimes, I made mistakes because I did not follow my gut, and it's like hindsight is. Yeah.
And there you have it, folks. The talented Mr. Steve Coulter. Thank you so much for joining my Zoomcast, the first one of 2023.
Thank you.
I truly appreciate your advice. You're such an amazing human being, sir. I mean, like I said, I talked to you before we went on live, and you're an amazing human being, an amazing person. I truly appreciate your time, and I wish you much, much, much more success.
Same to you. Same to you. Good luck, and good luck with just life.
Thank you so much, and God bless you for everything you do. You do for the actors out there. And I can't wait to see you on the screen, for your next projects.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Julio. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone who joined today on our Zoomcast. You guys have a very amazing day for the rest of the day, and stay safe out there. Appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Steve.
All right.